Plato himself, who is usually credited with inventing idealism, if you read his theories, he was not actually an idealist in the sense that he believed that the consciousness is primary or mental experience is primary, but it's the starting point. Right? Plato talks about these ideal forms, but these ideal forms, there's, for instance, the ideal form of a table is sometimes given as an example, and that's probably not some of the core archetypes of the universe or of God itself, but tables are created by human beings in particular cultural contexts, and they are an archetype in our perception, right? The way in which we classify the world, there is something like an ideal table. And so actually the forms that Plato is talking about that are mixtures when we create thoughts and so on are actually dimensions in an embedding space. And I suspect that Plato is the first guy who wrote about the embedding space that we discovered much later in AI. And he, in some of his texts, alludes to a world outside of our perception, outside of this mental construction that we experience. And that world is an outside simulated world that is isomorphic to the world that we experience in these forms. Then there's Aristotelianism. Basically, Aristotle says that the world is physical, mechanical, and it's a mathematical object at the lowest level, the logos. And then on top of the physical world, you have software, you have forms that shape dynamically how the world is working, and this is what Aristotle calls the soul. Then we have computationalist functionalism, which is basically the position that we can describe arbitrary systems using constructive languages, which means using computation. And functionalism means when we talk about objects, how did we get to these objects? Well, we constructed them over the observation of behavior, over functions. And so it's a position that allows us to make sense of how we model reality and, by extension, also the mind and consciousness. Or virtualism is the idea that consciousness is not a physical object, it's not a mechanism, it exists as if. And by existing as if, it becomes real because it has causal power on the world and thereby instantiates itself. And it's this idea of a Cartesian theater, global workspace theory, attention schema theory, consciousness being a model of our attentional control and so on, adaptive resonance theory that explains it as some kind of resonance between neural activation states. And all these theories are basically aspects of blind people touching the elephant from different sides, but in a way that fits together. And so there is a convergence of theories.